This video is about drawing zombies. I wanted to do something fun for this one. We've been covering a lot of kind of hardcore topics, composition, dynamics, and perspective, and things that are essential to learning how to draw comics, but sometimes it's nice to just go in and draw something fun. And I've been drawing a lot of zombies on the covers of the Walking Dead color re-release issues, and it's been incredibly fun and gratifying for me, so I kind of wanted to share with you some of the process that I went through to really get a sense of how I wanted to approach my zombies, and the things that go into posing and textures and lighting, and just some of my thoughts when I started drawing zombies for the covers of the book. I'm David Finch. I've been a comic book artist for over 25 years. If you enjoyed this video, please hit like and subscribe and share with your friends. And check out my Gumroad. I've got a link in the description below. I just released a series of arm drawings from different angles and a range of foreshortening that you can use for reference. Also, I have a new course on expressions and caricatures that you can find on my website. There's a link below. And you can also find it on Skillshare. I've also got a link for that in the description below. All right, let's go ahead and get started. So for our zombies, I'm going to draw a regular figure. And this is kind of my standard superhero pose, 3/4 view. I draw this all the time when I'm just drawing a figure just for demonstration purposes. So there's really nothing special about this one. I've got my chest up. He's in a bit of a superhero pose. Point his head toward us, so he's looking at us. And so there's my standard kind of a figure. And when I'm thinking about zombies, I want to think in terms of really pushing my angles. And a zombie really doesn't have very good control over their body. And so I might draw the zombie really slumped over. And also my figure is much thinner because zombies are, you know, they're pretty dried out. They've lost a lot of water and they're partly decayed. And so I'm going to draw him slumped way over. I'm going to angle his head. His head is kind of lolling to the side. And so he's still looking at us here, but I've really angled his head. Here's his neck connecting here. I want his hand in a fairly relaxed pose. And for my legs, they're much thinner, very bony. And I'm kind of putting the knees together because he doesn't have very good control over his body. And so his posture is an absolute mess. And knees together, kind of knocked like that, really gives the impression that he doesn't have a very good amount of strength in his legs to hold himself up like this. I'm going to dangle his other arm. Maybe I'll even drop his chest this way. His other arm dangles low. And I think that might be a little more interesting. And I could draw him with his chest up, give that a try, and do the same kind of thing I did with the first pose. And so here's my chest up, but he really has very little control over his body. And so I'm really going to kind of pronounce that. His arm is just going to be hanging back. And I'm going to rest his head directly onto his chest. He really doesn't have strength in his neck to hold his head up, so his head is just lolling on his chest. My other arm will be, you know, let's lift the arm for this one. Because if I draw too much back, he's going to really be falling backwards. And while I want him to be a zombie and he doesn't have a lot of control, if he's falling over, he'll just fall over. And for this one, maybe I'll stick his leg out. And I'm going to really straighten his leg because, and you'll see this, I watch a lot of MMA. And when fighters get tired, I just saw a fight where this was really happening to a fighter. As he got tired, he started losing strength in his leg and he was just really locking his knee, because when you lock your leg, you are not using your muscles, you're just using the constraints of your bones and it takes less energy. And so we'll go ahead and do that. Maybe I'll turn this foot kind of back, erase that. Kind of thinking on the fly a little bit, so I think I'll turn his foot back like he's kind of falling on it. See if that's gonna work. Let me turn it just a little bit more. And I want to make sure that my balance is pretty well over center so he doesn't just fall over. Take some ribs out. Really extend his arm back. It's just taking points like the neck, he doesn't support his neck well. So here it's really dangling down. Here he's got his chest really pushed up and he's got it dangling down. I could draw him bent over the way that I did the first time and lull his head back this way. He's lifting his head. And bring this arm out. Maybe cross this one over in front of him like this. Keep this leg straight here. And I just want to think in terms of keeping my bodies very, very loose and kind of floppy. And there are a million images of people cosplaying as zombies that you can just find online. And some of them are really great at moving in a very unnatural kind of a, undead sort of way. And it can be good just to go through some of those images and just give them a try, and it'll give you kind of a range of poses to go for. But that's generally my philosophy, much thinner. And I just have fun with the pose. And I'm going to lull his head way back here. So it looks like he's really having difficulty throwing that head around. And I want it to look like all of the elements of his body are being thrown rather than moved with muscle. And so that's kind of my philosophy when it comes to moving my zombies and posing them. So I didn't want to spend a huge amount of time on that. Really what I wanted to do with this is get into some detail. Let's draw a zombie head and start talking about some of the things that we can do with the face and the bones that rest underneath in order to really sell a character as a zombie. So to start, what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a standard head. I've got my line for my brow here, draw a line for the nose here, and then I'll have an equal distance down here for my chin, an equal distance for my forehead, draw a flat side to my head here. My ear connects between my brow and my nose. My mouth is going to be here about halfway, maybe just a little bit higher. Depends on the person, really. And that's a very quick sketch of, and I want the back of the head to project backwards. And that's my very simple, very Loomis inspired head that I use as my basis really for all of my heads when I draw. So my nose goes here. I've got an eye here below the brow. This is my brow line. So my brow is going to go here. Just really roughly, quickly sketching this stuff in. Something that I find really helps me place the eyes is I draw the orbital bone area for the eyes. So they're drawn in sockets, and that really helps place my eyes inside those sockets. And that also is going to really help us when we draw this character as a zombie. And so here he is. And I'm going to lighten this down, and we're going to draw just a regular face, and then we'll turn it into a zombie face. So I've got my eye here. I'm going to go fairly light with this because I'm going to be working with it and changing it quite a bit. I don't want to have to erase heavily drawn lines, so it's still going to be a little sketchy. Went a little small with that eye, out a little bit far with the brow, and it's just adjusting things a little bit. For my hair, I like to work with bigger shapes that I can then add a little bit of detail to in order to get a hairstyle. It's a real mistake to start drawing individual hairs everywhere and try to turn that into an overall flowing hairstyle. And so there we go. There is a rough drawing of my standard kind of a superhero head. But we're going to tighten it up by drawing him as a zombie. And so I'm going to start with my eye again. And I'll still go a little sketchy, and we'll do one more pass on this. I want my eye to be a little more rounded. He doesn't really have the control over his eyelids, so they might droop just a little bit. And I could really droop it almost just closed. Generally speaking, I find my zombies to be a little bit more intimidating when they have kind of wide eyes, really glaring into your soul. And around the eye, I really want to define the shape of my orbital bone, so we'll really see it well defined there. Now for my nose, I've got my nose right here still, there's a bone, and then there below that, this is all cartilage. And so what I want to do, I have a choice. I could just cut that off and draw the inside of the nose. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to draw a nose, but I really want to accentuate that plane change from the bone here to the cartilage. So like the nose is really kind of sunken in. So I think I'll curve it down a little bit, and it's going to be smaller and just a little sunken. Here we're going to see more of the skeletal structure underneath. So here we go. And now for my mouth, I want to open his mouth is going to be closed, but what I want to do is draw my teeth in there. So I'm going to draw through. Here's my upper jaw, my lower jaw. I want to make sure that these are fairly well lined up. I don't go too low with one. This lines up with the mouth and then comes up just a little bit as it rounds around the head. My ear, I'm gonna flatten out like it's a little drooped and a little dried up there. See some of the ear on the other side. And so let me erase this down. I've got a line for my upper teeth, a line for my lower teeth, and then my teeth are gonna be just in this area here. And obviously I don't want my teeth to look like that, but it's helpful for me to see where I want them to go. And so I'm going to start to define my teeth in. And I know just down the center, I've got my center teeth, top and bottom, eye teeth, and then they come around. And they get much narrower as they go around the other side of the head. And I can start to get my bottom teeth in here. Lighten this down as I go. And my teeth kind of connect in. I've got my upper teeth here, my lower teeth connect into them. And that's fine, that's teeth. But I'm going to lighten that down because with a zombie, you'd really see much deeper roots because the gums are very receded. So I want to draw these coming up very, very deep. I'll lengthen these out a little bit too. And that kind of gives me some teeth. But he still has an upper lip, and so I'm going to draw it over here. That's going to end up covering what I had, and his mouth is going to be kind of missing on this side. I've brought it away. And we're going to see some of the tendons remaining while the skin starts to kind of dissolve away on a zombie. You'll still see the tendons that rest underneath because they don't rot at the same rate, I guess. So I'm going to see a tendon there, see another one over here. I'm going to finish in my bottom teeth there. So you'll see the teeth kind of here more than over here, but at least because I've got them all drawn in, I'm not going to lose them. So here's my bottom lip. I'm going to have it kind of hanging. And so I'll draw it as a bit of a droopy shape here. My ear, I think maybe I'll just cut off some of it. Just gone. Now for my eyes, I really want to take my upper lid and droop it down at the edges. All of his skin is kind of falling. And his lower lid is very wrinkled and dropped. And I'll see a ridge here. We're still just sketching, just getting everything kind of figured out. Take away some of his skin here so you can see the skull underneath, maybe another little patch here. And so I'll just draw a bit of a ridge here, and then a ridge here, another little hole here. This bone very pronounced here. And now for his hair, I drew in hair that is pretty styled and clean looking. And for a zombie, I want it to be just drooping down and looking kind of wet and oily and covered in dirt and disgusting. So, and maybe I'll just take a patch of it away here. You'll see some of the skull here. It's just very, very droopy looking hair. Now his neck is going to be very thinned out. So I'm going to see his Adam's apple very pronounced. This muscle connecting to the clavicle will be much more pronounced. And these tendons in here will be very, very visible. I'm going to wrinkle the neck quite a bit. He's got his clavicle bone here. I really want that to stick out. And there's going to be my sketch. So from here, we're going to do one last pass with the eraser and lighten this all down. And so I can still see it. Everything's there for me, but I can draw something much tighter on top. And so I'm going to draw my upper lid here. I went down pretty far with the wrinkles on the outside. My lower lid. I'll draw a ridge for the lid so you can see that plane change there. My other eye. I'm not worrying about anything but just getting my forms described in here right now. For his wrinkles, I tend to come up like this and then use jagged shapes. And then those jagged shapes can start to interconnect with each other to get a bit of a pattern. I'm gonna create some wrinkles over the ridge of his lower orbital bone here. And this right here is gonna be a bit of a, I'm gonna put a little bit of a shadow in here. So this is riding above what's below. Open this up. Upper lid, he's really not gonna have an eyebrow. It's gonna be basically gone. And so I'm just gonna draw the upper portion of his orbital bone here connecting, getting a little loose. There we go. Draw wrinkles all underneath his eye here. Over his nose. That ridge that I had. His nose underneath. Start to draw my tendons, and I'm going to want to, I've got a tendon here, I'll put another one kind of behind here, another one disappearing back here, and I'm just kind of interconnecting shapes right now. So exact placement, not really something that I worry about too much. I know that I've got a tendon basically here, another one here connecting the jaw back here. I don't really worry about making it 100% anatomically perfect. I'm going to draw his upper lip. I want it to be pretty heavily wrinkled. Lower lip. And just create some wrinkles around it. It's going to droop quite a bit here. Wrinkle from the top of the nose. He's got flesh from his face just kind of dropping. Now his chin, I'm going to do the same thing I'm going to do up here. I'm just going to open that up and we'll see some of the bone underneath. Wrinkles from where his lip is just drooping down. And I've got my teeth well defined here, so I'm just going to go ahead and clean those in just a little bit. They start to get narrow as they round the corner toward the back. And we're going to see much more of the back of the teeth than you would on a character, obviously with more lip. And he's coming along. And so I don't want him to look like he's frowning so much, but I really want to accentuate these wrinkles. I'm just going to have him come up through the center like this. Got a lip here, not a, lip, but a lip of flesh here. And then his skull visible below. This lip will be here. I'm going to do the same thing here, so I'll be shadowing under here. Create a little bit of a lip at the bottom of that shape here. Draw some wrinkles extending up into it. Wrinkles crossway. Just draw in his ear. And I'll have a big chunk of it missing out of here. And so let's get his hair drawn in here. And again, just very lank. Even a little patchy. Have a bit of a section missing just in here. There, and that's going to give me enough of a framework that I can finish his hair on top of that pretty well. Losing a little bit here. Clean it up just a bit. All right. And so now we're going to draw his neck, and I want it to be really wrinkled. So I'm just going to kind of connect shapes in just like this. You can see how connecting these shapes together gives you a nice kind of a wrinkly pattern, especially once you start to shadow underneath, which we will do in just a minute once we get this drawn in here. You can really see his tendons of his neck pronounced. So it's a good idea to really kind of learn these. You don't need to be too perfect with it. And a huge amount of the illusion is just created with lighting, which once we put that in, you'll really see what I mean. Clavicle bone here. Got a pretty good divot in there. It's really sunken in. Adam's apple. And we'll really see his ribs. In the profile, I really want to ridge it where his ribs would be in there. All right, so at this point, we're just gonna start putting in some lighting. And so I wanna go heavier here under his lid. And I find it's very helpful. When I'm not really 100% sure what I wanna do with lighting, I can just start underneath shapes that are turned away from the light. I'm lighting it from here, and just start using line weights. That can really start solidifying your forms quite a bit before you really start worrying about any kind of heavy lighting. So just connecting shapes. As I round around, I'm going to an underside, so it just goes a little thicker here, a little thicker here, underside, a little thicker here. This is all riding above what's below here, so I'm going thicker here. And you can see it starts to develop into something very quickly and easily without me having to worry too much about rounding overall larger forms. This is rounding away from the light, putting quite a bit more shadow there, but for now, let's just do line weights. This is a great way to get a fairly realized drawing that you can take further without having to think about all of your lighting at once. I know I want this to curve under here. This is going to be a ridge, so let's just kind of define that in here. Underneath his eyelid here, same thing over here. All going to be turned away from the light, so continue out that ridge just a little bit. Underneath his jawbone here, underneath his earlobe, under his jaw, under the ridge of his lip, Adam's apple. This lip is going to be dark underneath, and I know I've got a bit of a pocket here that I can just make dark. I can do the same thing over here. Might as well just put that in. That whole area is going to be dark as it recedes back. So I've got shape, another shape, and maybe another one here. And so if I'm lighting from here, as it curves under, it gets thicker. As this one curves under, it gets thicker. It's coming away from the light a little bit more. This one is thicker. So does this one. And I want to make sure to emphasize my connection points. And that's really all I'm doing for all this. I've kind of lost this here. So I guess I would need to kind of complete that form just so we don't have something that is hanging off. But that's really it. And I'm just going through all the way around here and just establishing that. And that's how I can get all of these little folds drawn in, and they all work and they end up looking lit just using that technique right there. Have the heavy line underneath that fold here, with that ridge of skin, another one here, underneath here. And as I get more of it drawn in, it's starting to be clear to me where I want to go with everything, where I want to go with my lighting. Just getting a good portion of your picture completed with line weights will start to give you an overall feeling, and you can start taking it further from there. I think I want this whole area to be dark here. It's like this. I'm going to darken this area here. I'm going to cast a shadow from his nose away from the light over his lip. Bit of a heavier shadow here. And this whole lip area is going to round away from the light, so we'll go quite a bit darker. Underneath his cheekbone. And I think really this whole area here should probably just be dark. I don't want to close things in too much though. Pocket of shadow here, and here. I'm gonna go dark here. He's got his eyelid here. I think I'm not gonna go dark all the way through. Finding in some wrinkles. This area here would be fairly dark all through here. And so from under his eye, I'm going to draw a line, and then another line connecting underneath it, and maybe another one here, and then I can kind of break it. And when I draw a shadow underneath it, I can stop there. It's like that. And then I should really not have that line there. This is really the one I want to concentrate on. And then draw another line here. And it looks like you have one shape overlapping another shape. I'll do another one just right here. And it gives you a lot of layering. I can very quickly and easily do that under here. Do another one over here, and continue my folds under that. I want his face to get a little dark in here because it rounds down in this area. I don't want to get too carried away with that. So I'm going to kind of ease my way into it. I'll start dark here over this wrinkle, finding a wrinkle here, and just start to build up some wrinkles. I've got this shape here, so that turns away from the light here quite a bit, a little less there. Got some eaten away sections here, and so I can just create a shape like that, and then where it turns away from the light, I'm just going to make it a little bit thicker in the line, and that gives the illusion right there. And I could even accentuate it by bringing this shadow underneath up and a little lower here, and so it looks like it's riding above. I'm just connecting some wrinkly kind of decayed flesh shapes just using this sort of thing here. I'm using my wrinkles almost like rendering. And I think I'm going to go darker all the way down through here. So this will be darker, darken up over here. And this whole area should be darker here because the whole side of the head is turning away from the light. I'm going a little bit light, but this is kind of the strategy of being able to establish in your lighting in a simple way and then build it afterwards. If I was just to block in lighting in larger shapes, it'd be very difficult for me to cut back into that without erasing, and things can start to get a little bit blocky that way, I feel like. This gives me the ability to darken it where I want, open it up for some nice little detail like in here, and still get my overall lighting feel. I'm going to make his gums just completely dark. And the teeth, as they start to round around and away, my line gets thicker away from the light. And then I thin it out to almost nothing here. I think I'll just go dark again here. Not here. I think I'll catch a little bit of light with his gums here. And we'll give him a missing tooth. Looking a little uniform. And I'm going to cast a shadow across this whole area here. Draw some wrinkles. I've got a bit of a shape. I don't even know what I really had here, but I'm going to use that as a bit of a barrier. So this is just a bit of a layer on top of something that's just more wrinkled below. And I can start it again on the other side of it. And it gives it a bit of an interesting ridge that I can just use. Start shadowing underneath here. Building this area up here. Now it starts to just become a matter of going over the picture, and you want an overall lighting kind of rounded flow, and so this should be shadowed as it kind of turns away from the light. And what I want to avoid is something that just looks overly detailed everywhere, so it's going to get much less detailed as it comes up toward the light here. And where I do detail, I can just use a much thinner line. Shouldn't say it's going to get less detailed. I have a very difficult time stopping with detail, so it just goes worse and worse and worse until eventually I kill a picture, and we'll see if that happens this time with this one. I'm gonna pocket some lighting into here. This whole area is very sunken. now, quickly, what I'm going to do, I'm going to lighten some of this up. This would be catching quite a bit of light, and as I'm looking at it, I feel like it's looking a little bit too busy. So I'll do some rendering here. Give me that lip. I kind of want to open that up just a little bit more, and if I put lines in there, I'll keep them much thinner. And so what I did here is just a larger version of exactly what I did here. Got a shape overlapping, kind of stopping, and I continued it through, so it looks like I've got overlapping bands. I'm going to cast a shadow under all of this for his head over his neck. This whole area will be dark. I can just go ahead and get that defined in. Area will be dark here. I'll cast a shadow over his body here. And so just by drawing up to here and stopping where I had this little thing here, and then drawing past it, again, it creates the same kind of illusion. I've got a shape kind of intersecting with another shape, so I'm just stopping at that shape and then continuing above it, and you get that effect. And here, I really go just negative space just by losing that line entirely and drawing it on the other side, continuing through. And let's do that. There we go. It's a bit of a larger shape. Let's just get that drawn in there. Got a bit of a tendon here. Maybe I'll put another one here. Got another one kind of here. And I'm just kind of throwing these in wherever I feel like they would kind of look good. This is connecting under, so I'm going to shadow that. And his whole chin area should be quite a bit darker as it rounds away. So just darken that under here. So I've got an overall shape here. Same thing. I had a shape and I just put a little shadow up here, and that makes it look like I've got something that rounds here underneath this. And it's a trick I use over and over and over, especially with something like a zombie that has all kinds of layered pieces like that. And you can see how I can get something that looks very dimensionally just using very, very simple techniques over and over again. Same thing there. Draw some wrinkles around his ear. Let me finish out the shadow in his ear. I could continue this over his clavicle a little bit just by doing that. As I define this stuff, I just start to lighten and darken where it feels like it needs to, just to get an overall kind of a feeling. Shadow under his clavicle. I'm gonna just start to block in some shadow for his muscle here. As I get away from the face too, I have a tendency to start blocking larger shapes. Give him a big ridge of raised in over muscle here. And I kind of had that defined here. So let me erase that little line out that's in the way. It's not really erasing. There we go. I'm going to create like a little exposed kind of deep pocket in here. And I'm doing that by shadowing above it, shadowing below it, and then I can draw some kind of darker detail just down in here and leave this open and round it over. And it gives the impression that I've got something really deep and awful in there. And I don't want just one clean layer of raised skin. It starts to look a little bony, so I'm gonna draw some other layers over it. I still have my overall muscular shape here. Start to define that over this a little bit. It's gonna be dark in here. cast shadow from the shoulder over the bicep, and I think I'll just darken all that in right there. And this is a much larger version of just Wrinkles, and I know I've got larger kind of shapes for his ribs that I can see here, but I don't want to just draw ribs right across. It would start to look pretty uniform, so I'm just kind of breaking it up using some kind of wrinkly sort of shapes. This is all going to be dark here as we start to come away from the light, so I'm just going to, the upper side is dark, maybe bring that down just a little bit more here. His other ear here hanging out there. Give this just a little bit of line weight. We're kind of coming up toward the light, so I don't want to get too pronounced with any kind of shadowing. Kind of continuing, I've got this shape here, so I want to continue it past this raised piece over it. Nice jagged kind of a shape. Muscle kind of connecting here. I think I'm going to erase that. I want his clavicle there, but I want to define it with black shapes instead of a line up there. Take this shape and connect it under this shape here, just like that. And as always, I can continue it. And I think this whole area here is a little darker. Really want to recess that whole area. Race here, I don't want to have thin lines defined into the light forms, really, if I can avoid it. Really like to have all my shapes defined by shadow as much as possible. And so I can wrinkle out of the shadow and create some detail over it, but I don't want to draw. It's the equivalent of if I draw a nose and I'm lighting it from this side and I can see a really thick line, or I'm shadowing from this side, and I can see a really thick line on this side of the nose. It's distracting on the face, and my preference is to really just kind of break that up so you don't see it at all. Got the shadow under the nose here. Then you would see it defined by where the eye rests against it here and the cheek here, and it's just more effective from a lighting perspective, and I try to bear that in mind as I go through and draw all this stuff. I've got a shadow under here and under here just to define this, and then draw some tendony, muscly, I guess this would be muscle on the side of the head here. And I'm drawing right through my hair right now. And I might go dark with the hair, I might go light. If I go light, that means I'm going to have to erase through. I'm finding I've got really complex things going underneath my hair, and trying to think about those things with the hair at the same time. And it's a lot. So I do find at times like that, it's easier just to draw through and erase if I have to. And I'm going to decide what color to make his hair, whether I want it to be dark or light, based on what I think is going to work best. If I have a lot of shadow underneath, then it can kind of pop. I don't have much, so I think I probably will go dark with it. Shadow under the hair here. And just even doing this is enough to start to give me an idea of how this is going to work for me. Shadow here. And as I put shadows under my hair, I'm doing this entirely so I can kind of define it over the surface below. Get a good sense of where I am with it. And I think I'm going to need to erase through here, get that hair working. And I'm going to erase some of this here. Now that I kind of know where I'm going with the hair, I'm going to erase through so it intersects over the hair. I've got hair underneath a bit of a strand that pops out here, and I just did the same thing that I'm doing all through here with this example here. Same thing again here. You may find this technique, it works very easily, and if it works very easily and you get a sense of it very quickly, but it can start to look a little uniform if you're not careful. So I would really recommend that you experiment with it and don't stop using it. As you go along, you'll be able to start using it as a tool in your arsenal that works really well stylistically as a technique, but that doesn't dominate your picture and start to make it look like a bit of an overbearing style choice. And you'll see that in younger artists. It's very common where they'll develop a technique and then overuse it to such an extent that it really dominates the work. That's something you want to avoid, but I think it's potentially a little unavoidable for a little while. As you learn things, they start to become overly pronounced until they settle into your work. Just kind of completing up my hair, just making sure that I've got enough going on, that if this were to be inked, I don't have an inker looking at it going, I can't tell what is happening with this stuff here. I find with a good inker that really knows their forms, I don't need to give them too much, but just enough so that it's not self-contradictory and my forms end, like the edges of these hairs here, well enough that they can clean it up a little bit if they need to, but they're not having to make major decisions for me. I know that the best of inkers, that can be very stressful because even though pencils can get loose, pencils generally have a very firm idea of what they want, and it's stressful trying to make choices for someone that is going to be critiquing your choices based on what they would have done. So you want to give your inker as much information as possible to go from. And as you work with them more, you'll be able to potentially loosen up and you can develop a shorthand together. So now that I have my hair, I probably should have done this way in the first place. I can start to get some of my wrinkles drawn underneath it. And see how putting just a little bit of shadow there pushes this form behind this one without drawing that whole line all the way around. And these lines here are really just to give some texture to the skin. I want to give it an overall rendered feel around, and I'm using this kind of like rendering, but it keeps it kind of airy and makes the skin look a little more ghastly and textured. And I've got this so I can start to use my undersides a little bit and create little pockets. I want to be really careful to not get too carried away because it can start to look like too much going on in the light. And we'll see. I'll just go with this, and if it turns into too much, I'll just pare it back a little bit. And so from here, this picture is really not rendered, believe it or not. There's so much detail going on that I probably don't need to put any in at all, but I'm going to put in some just to soften some of my broader shapes, like underneath his lip, or not underneath it, but as it rounds up toward the light here. I can knock that back with some shadow or some wall rendering. Soften this little area here. Make that neck area not be such a clean shape. Up and through here on the ridge over his nose. Darken that side of his nose a little bit. Soften this whole area here. All this back. I'm going to do the same thing on his forehead, above his brow. I've already really kind of darkened this area in. Maybe I can go over it again and really push it back. I'm just going to kind of soften forms a little bit where I feel like it might be a little bit stark looking. Very careful not to overdo it too much. And I can also, I've got this as this is all raised over this right here. I can just put a few lines in there and that really pushes that down. Do the same thing here. Push that in just a little bit more that way. Here too. Truth is, I feel like this whole area here is really distracting for me. I think it should be much lighter. I'm going to reestablish my hair. I don't want the hair. Maybe leave this much more open. A little bit of detail, something like this. Let it flow through. And I think I'll leave it a little bit more like that. And that's looking a little bit more balanced. Now with his neck, I'm gonna soften this form here. Here. Push this back with some line. And I'm going to use rendering here to layer this. So I've got this raised here, this is lower, and I'll lower this the same way, maybe here. And it kind of gives me a bit of texture, and then I can accentuate the lip a little bit. Give him some more goop hanging off of his chin here. Looks a little better in the silhouette, or maybe not, but it's there now. I want to broadly soften his whole shoulder area without detailing it more, and so I'm just going to use rendering around here. Up a little bit, things got a little lost in there, and this is especially working quickly, and I've been working a little bit quickly here. An important part of drawing is looking where you lose your shapes a little bit and just kind of defining them. Now this area I'm going to kill back, that'll push it way in there. A little more here, 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 and this is a really great way that you can use this technique without overpowering. And so I've got a shape here, and if I render up to it and then just start past it, I'm getting that same effect that I had here, and I can even soften that just a little bit. This is something I use all the time. It really is the same exact technique, just done in a different way, and it's a little softer. So I can use the same basic drawing technique without it overpowering my image by being the same basic size, depth, and darkness of shape all over. Create a little pocket here, little one here. I'm just going to kind of darken those in. I don't want to completely shadow them in. Again, that would start to get overpowering, but just using rendering strategically can really give you quite a bit of depth and subtlety. And it's just raising and lowering with a little bit of line. Once you get a feel for this, it is very relaxing to do. All of my major drawing decisions are finished, and I'm just like, I'm going to create a little darker area here. I'm going to raise this and raise this by just putting my rendering right in there. Very simple, and it's very effective. And this is all going to start to fade dark as it rounds under. I think I'll just fade this too. And that gives me a nice kind of rounded shoulder, really ghastly with a lot of lumpy kind of shapes, all put together into a rounded form. And I kind of achieved that just using rendering and opening and closing things in. It just pushes things in and out, and it's very quick and easy to start to get a feel for that. And with his clavicle, I can do the same thing. I'm going to render up through that. And I should probably do a little bit just in here to soften some of these. And if I render up like this and then just put a little bit on the other side, that really creates a ridge without big shadow here and a shadow here, which is too harsh. That's not what I'm looking for. And so I can render here. Now I do have a shadow on this side, and then just put dots there, and it really raises that up and gives me something that's interesting, and it doesn't close my shapes in. And I'm going to use this technique right here. That kind of gives me this whole strange kind of muscular area. I kind of want that to fade down a little closer with it. Went down. I'm getting a little sketchy. I don't mind when I get away from the face to get a little more sketchy, but not so much that it starts to look like a mess. And so I don't want to just draw regular eyes on them, but what I do want to do is I'm going to define my iris like this, and then I'm gonna leave that open and put some veins in there on the side. Lightly define it, not even all the way around, so it's there, but it's very milky and faded. Veins in there, that gives me eyes that are, and I can even, so I've got this thing lightly defined, put some veins up to it like this, and then I can just kind of slightly line weight under those veins, and it raises that ridge and looks truly awful. And that's going to do it. That's our zombie. So thank you everyone so much for watching. This was a lot of fun. For our next tutorial, we'll get into something a little bit more serious again. But for this one, I just enjoyed drawing a zombie and drawing all of the crags and rotten flesh and just having some fun with some detail. Be sure to tune in Monday nights for our Monday Night Draw live stream with Meredith and Dave. That would be me. And I will see you in the next video.